Waste management was becoming more complex. As the environmental movement gained traction in the 60s and 70s, this led to greater focus on sustainability. With this movement and focus on sustainability came a more complex collection system and the introduction of the recycling bin and the compost bin. This meant that consumers no longer used one can for discard. They had to learn which items belonged in which bin. New facilities were required to manage these endpoints, such as the Material Recovery Facility. In addition to the societal impact, legislation and guidelines like the Subtitle D and Clean Air Act were enacted in order to more sustainably manage solid waste. Under these regulations, landfills were becoming more advanced with the use of liners and measurement of emissions. There was a need to understand the changing system and practices. The environmental movement, coupled with the legislation, indicated a need for sound solid waste science, but there was little research on which to build and justify the policies and guidelines, which cost money and personnel time. Therefore, a solid, science-based foundation was needed.
Actually, there were a lot of people that did not think that the foundation would ever fly. I had one garbage guy tell me, he said, "Michael," said, "listen, we run a very simple business here. We pick up a can, we empty it, throw it in a hopper, take it to a landfill and dump it. And that's the extent of our science." And I just thought, 2 years later, he put in $500,000, $500,000 into the pot.
Here's kind of how it began. Gene Wingeter, Bruce Parker, and myself formed a corporation known as the Environmental Research and Education Foundation. We had no office. We had simply a corporate charter. We had a study that had been done by a man by the name of Fazio to determine whether or not the trade association should help foster the development of a 501c3 to raise charitable dollars to promote projects and things that brought good science to all of the regulation that was going on. The Fazio report was that, yes, we could raise charitable dollars. We could form an organization.
I was the executive director, CEO of the National Solid Waste Management Association for about 25 years. And when I retired, I was asked to see about funding an organization that could support research and other activities that were beyond the scope of the association's role and budget.
At the time EREF was formed, there was not a single organization that was raising charitable dollars to fund one of the biggest disasters in this country.
The industry as a whole was going through a period of change, and there was a need for more information across the whole of the industry about what is actually going on.
Most of the early formative years were involved in raising money and getting a board. It took a while to get a board of directors because of the reluctance of people to donate $50,000. But we finally did. One of our first board members, Fred Leach, had made a pledge of $50,000 and was trying to come to grips with that. We had a meeting to see about the possibility of him donating truck bodies as opposed to money. We debated what in the world would we do with truck bodies. We discussed the idea of having an auction that got us into raising money by auction as opposed to truly just donation.
And I went to the manufacturers and I talked about donating equipment, and we would auction off equipment at our trade show, the Waste Expo, as a way of raising more money and do that as many years as we could.
One of the things that we liked was research. We were basing regulation on premonition, but not good science.
There was a study done that indicated that the amount of research being done in an engineering and scientific fashion in the waste industry was negligible. It just didn't exist.
We knew that in the area of disposal, the problems with landfills and the need to make research apply to these problems in a way that would sustain the growth of landfills was going to help us. So we definitely wanted to support a program that would address the critical issues, the issues that the federal government was not really addressing the way it should.
The advantage to the foundation is we're going to do the science that's going to make us credible. Not only that, but we're going to be ahead of the curve. We're not going to be reacting to things we don't know about. We're creating things that need attention and need to be addressed.
But we needed to add professionals. We needed the engineers and the consultants.
I was actually present when we actually received our first check to allow us to actually established the scholarship program. It was named by a gentleman called Francois Fischinger, who was part of the Suez organization at that time. And Suez wanted to recognize his contribution to the industry. They gave us a fairly sizable check, which we established a scholarship in his name with, and that became our first named scholarship.
I think more than anything else, Bob Stearns was responsible for those scholarships coming. To him, it just seemed like this is a great idea, that we could provide scholarships to people who have an interest in solid waste research and science. It was a no-brainer.
And from that, as you know, the scholarship program has grown to where it is today.
The Fessinger Memorial Gift got us into education. You have the birth of the auction that got us into raising money by auction as opposed to truly just donation.
The way the foundation initially started, it was to be a subsidiary of NSWMA, the National Solid Waste Management Association. And it was going to do research that they felt was significant for them. But they're a trade association. That's an entirely different animal. They're a 501c6. The foundation was chartered as a 501c3.
I think the defining moment would have to be when we finally broke from NSWMA, a trade association, and became truly a 501c3 charitable organization. And rather than representing member interest as a trade association, we represented the public good. What could we do that would make a significant difference, make a positive impact on the environmental industry?
Everything we do, be it good or bad, it'll never be indifferent. Be it good or bad, is disseminated. And it's disseminated to everybody. It gave everybody the opportunity to participate and to learn and to understand what managing solid waste was all about and how the foundation could become the science arm of the industry and provide information that will carry us forward.
We needed money to fund the foundation, and we needed people who were going to give that money. Philanthropy was very important to us at that point in time. Over time, as we received funding and as we were able to sort of recycle that cash through to actually fund the project itself, there has been a shift in direction. I think we should recognize the manufacturers, equipment suppliers have been a major supporter to us that allow us to offset the day-to-day costs of the foundation. As the foundation gained momentum, the challenges that presented for us from an organisational point of view were fairly significant. We also recognised, quite frankly, that maybe we weren't the best people, some of the people who were sitting on the board, myself included, to be making these sort of technical decisions about the merits of various projects. And we really needed people who were much closer to the coalface, if you will, to help us make those decisions.
The Research Council is, without a doubt, one of the best things that the foundation had done. I could see the need for change. My choice was Brian from the start. To go from a fundraising type of environment to putting a scientist in charge and having the fundraiser work for him, that was the way to go.
That's when we finally became an organization that not only had the will and determination and the right leadership, but we also had the wherewithal to start doing the good work.
I think we realised that in order for the foundation to be really successful, we did need to get our communications act together. And we needed to recruit some talent who could help us with that, shape the way that we communicated with the foundation, change direction, thought about how we projected ourselves, and think about what messages we wanted to deliver as we went forward. And that was why we sort of regrouped ourselves and came up with the rebranding of the foundation. So it's been a very positive change, a quantum change, if you would say, in the way that I think we're perceived. We're now seen as credible, independent, legitimate sources of scientific information that supports our industry.